We all know that travel is expensive, especially international trips, but it doesn't have to be that way if you know a few tips and tricks. Over the last few years, I've traveled to over 16 different countries and I haven't spent more than a few $1,000s. And most of my savings came from flights, housing, and food. Here's how. Starting off with long-haul flights, you're gonna have to get into the loyalty and points game if you wanna get good deals here, especially if you wanna fly business class. Since you're not really gonna find that many deals for flights unless you're flying off-peak season or if the airline is running a promotional, but you can't really rely on those. My card of choice is the Amex Platinum card, and solely because of the transfer partners they have with airlines. My favorite transfer partner is ANA, and not just because I go to Japan a lot, if you see my last video, but mainly because ANA offers the best point redemptions for business class flights. For example, just 2 months ago, I booked a trip on ANA that took me to the US, Korea, Japan, France, and Portugal, all in business class for, get this, I know you might not believe it, $700 and about 100,000 Amex points. Now that might sound like an insane deal, but there is a big downside in the fact that I have to be flexible with dates. There's not going to be dates for your flights for business anytime you want, and availability is limited, especially to popular places like Japan. So for that trip that I just talked about, I booked the flights back in December for a trip that was happening less than 3 weeks away. And I know that kind of last minute planning doesn't work for a lot of people, but if you're solo traveling, that flexibility is key to get deals like this. Another way that the Amex card helps me save money is that it gets me into airport lounges for free. And inside of these lounges, I usually have access to free water, free food, water bottles, nice couches, clean bathrooms, things like that. These aren't necessities, but if you're on a long layover or if you're parched or hungry, you could either spend it a la carte for the restaurants in the airport, or since I have the card anyway, might as well go to the lounge and get some free food. All right, let me level with you. I know you might be thinking, wait, Kenny, don't these like credit cards have high annual fees? And yes, they do. They do have high annual fees. The Amex Platinum card costs $700 per year just to own. And that might seem like a lot, but in the time that I've had it, it's kind of paid for itself just in the business class flights alone, and you do have these other perks and credits that you can use to offset that cost. So depending on your use case, it may or may not be worth it, so let me down in the comments what you think. Obviously, I can't fly business class everywhere I go, that would be insane, although really nice. So another way to save money is definitely to just fly with budget airlines like Spirit, Frontier, EasyJet, Ryanair, things like that. But the big issue with budget airlines is that they always charge for an extra bag. And for me, I've made it a point to only travel with one backpack, which I've been doing for the last 3 years. And I really haven't missed having that extra bag while doing so, even while on trips that last more than a month. And at the same time, I've been saving a bunch of money on those baggage fees. Hey there, tech reviewer Kenny, just jumping in for a second because I thought you might be wondering what kind of bag that I use for one bag travel. These are my 2 bags that I used previously, the Osprey Porter 46. 46 stands for 46 liters, as well as the Peak Design Travel Pack 35 liter version, which is the large one. So the Osprey Porter 46 is the first bag that I got for one bag travel, and the reason why I got 46 was because I was kind of worried about not having enough space, but now that I've been doing it for 3 years, it's actually too much space, so it has a lot of like empty baggage now if I ever use this for travel. But it's great as like a starter bag because it's pretty affordable. You can get them for less than $100 these days. And it's got a bunch of space, a bunch of storage, but it definitely does look more utilitarian. Last year or 2 years ago, I bought this Peak Design Travel Pack 35 liter. This is a very popular bag among the tech community because it's like a camera bag and I do a lot of filming these days. If you saw my last video on what tech to take with you on your travels, this is the bag that I use to store everything. And the biggest reasons why I switched were aesthetics. For one, I like the latch style backpack opening mechanism of this one more than I do for the zippers on the Osprey, but they both have their merits, as well as the side zip action here is also really convenient. And for the last 1.5 years or 2 years or so, I've been using this as my one bag solution, and because I've been able to pare things down, I don't need to carry as much stuff as I used to in my Osprey, so this has been working just fine, and airlines will never check this if it's too big. Anyway, that was a quick sidebar on the bags that I use. Back to the video. When I'm finally at my destination, if it exists, the next best thing to save money is to use public transport. It's fast enough, cheaper than Uber, and more convenient than a lot of other options. Even if I'm only in a place for less than a week, I try to make it a point to always grab a transport card, whether that be in Amsterdam, Japan, Korea, Paris, Lisbon. I always try to get a Metro Pass because they're generally cheaper than trying to get one of those tourist day passes or 3-day passes. For example, in Paris, the Metro card, if you have one, you can get a young person pass for the weekend that only costs 6 or 7 euros, versus the tourist pass for the same amount of time, it would cost you over 20 euros. So you can save a bunch of money just by doing a little bit of research. And I almost kind of treat them as Pokemon cards since they double as souvenirs. Now, most people know about Airbnb, hostels, and hotels, but for me, if I'm traveling to a new destination, I generally try and stay for at least 2 weeks to get a better vibe for the city. And in these cases, a lot of the time, Airbnbs and hotels are way too expensive. And for hostels, I mean, I guess you could stay in a hostel for more than 2 weeks, but it just doesn't seem very comfortable. And the way I save a bunch of money here is to utilize Facebook groups and Facebook Marketplace to find local people or local travelers who have a permanent base there and often sublet their apartments out to other travelers whenever they're not there, or if they just have like a spare room. For example, I've been able to get 1-bedroom apartments in Lisbon for $25 to $30 a night. And that might seem like a lot compared to a hostel, but you have to remember this is a full apartment. Bedroom, living room, furnished with a kitchen, everything like that. On Airbnb, something similar would cost probably around $2,500, if not more. Basically an Airbnb, but better than an Airbnb solely because this is not an Airbnb. This is a house. So you're not gonna have all the quality control issues that you have with Airbnb hosts. And I'm more confident in the fact that it's probably a lot more clean since, again, with the quality control of Airbnb, you're not really sure if the host is doing their job in, maintaining a clean and sanitary space. But again, there is the same flaw that we had with the flights. There's not gonna be availability for whenever you want. You're gonna have to do some hunting, you're gonna have to do some research. So you're not gonna be able to plan months in advance, but for me, that's definitely a trade-off I'm willing to make. But there have been times where I couldn't find a sublet on Facebook or WhatsApp groups. And so in those emergency cases, I generally just try and find the cheapest hotel with at least a kitchenette. And that's gonna be important for the next tip. Since I'm usually staying at a place for at least 2 weeks, eating out every day at expensive restaurants just isn't feasible financially. So for this, I generally like to break it down into 2 distinct categories: fuel food and experience food. For fuel food, it really is just kind of how it sounds. It's fuel for me to get through my travels. And for this, I generally look for snacks, local, unfancy mom and pop restaurants, as well as the grocery store to pick up local ingredients to create a nice meal at home. Which is why it's important for me while traveling to have access to a kitchen or at least a kitchenette/microwave to try and whip something up. Eating like this gives me the fuel that I need, as well as not breaking the bank, so I can save that money for experience food. I define experience food as things like Michelin guide restaurants, popular touristic places that I've seen on social media that I want to try. They often end up being more expensive because they're super popular, but if I'm in a new place, I'm not just going to be frugal and eat grocery store foods. I'm traveling. I want to experience some new, good food to bring back home. And in my opinion, having experience food on the list is always a must-have because, come on, you're traveling, you're gonna want to enjoy yourself, and treating yourself to a nice restaurant here and there is, I would say, a necessity, but definitely don't overdo it. And that's basically it. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment below if you have thoughts or questions, and until next time.